Hi, everyone. I hate to admit it, but yeah, hurricane season is here. June 1st, and here we go, rock and roll. Let's talk about some of the legal things here. And before I get into that, who are you and what firm do you work for and how long have you been doing this?
My name is John Tolley. I work for JT Law Firm. We represent clients in Florida, New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. And before starting my own law firm at JT Law Firm, I was actually working for insurance carriers. So I think I'm hitting about 5 years of doing this type of law.
JT Law Firm, that has a great reputation. How have you built the clientele over the years?
Well, my thought process I started the firm, so my thought process was, I'm a trial lawyer. Most lawyers aren't trial lawyers. So I knew that I could always get my clients to the end game, right, to trial if necessary. And that was always the focus, is that the insurance companies will know my clients will have the opportunity to have a trial lawyer representing them. And because of that, we've been able to facilitate such great settlements or resolutions on cases because the insurance companies know JT Law Firm and the lawyers there are not afraid to go to trial and will go if they have to.
What's your take on this hurricane season? What do you think I suppose the biggest legal challenges will be?
Well, the issue this year we have more than ever is, you've probably seen the rise in costs of homeowners insurance. The legislature seems to be meeting every year at this point to try to make some type of new laws. So the issue we're going to have this year is to see how those new laws last year come into effect and play into the policies this year for hurricane season, because some coverages were slashed, deductibles were raised. So there's going to be a lot of differences and a lot of things that have to be done differently as opposed to the other previous hurricane seasons.
I've heard a lot of debate on this. A lot of insurance companies just bailed. Thousands and thousands of people lost their policies. What's your take on that? I've heard various debate, litigious, problems with management. What do you think the problem was?
So the issue is that insurance companies have what's called reinsurance. That's their own form of insurance. When they reach a certain amount in paid out claims, then that company comes in and pays the rest of the claims. That's not regulated here in the state of Florida, so these insurance companies have to go out and get reinsurance from the global market, which costs went up astronomically over the last 2 years, and because of that, they've passed that buck to us as homeowners here in Florida.
So Florida needs to regulate it.
Florida or the federal government needs to have some form of regulating reinsurance companies, so that way these insurance companies that are providing services to Floridians and other people throughout the country aren't paying astronomical rates for reinsurance and then passing it up to us through the deductibles or through our premiums.
What's the best strategy for people watching this right now? I told you before we started rolling here that my wife and I have been struggling with the home insurance, property insurance going up astronomically, and we've made adjustments when we went to another company. What's the best strategy? Should we look at the data, look at the numbers, and figure out what the best place to go is?
Well, right now it's kind of two-part. One, and I know this sounds kind of corny, but you really need to write your local representative, because those are the people that it's going to make the biggest changes, right? Those are the people that are going to deal with the special legislation that's coming up, and those are going to be the people that deal with what your policy is going to look like over the next 3, 4, 5 hurricane seasons. And then the other thing is you need to review your policy. I know most of the time we get, our insurance broker sends us the document, hey, just sign it, get it done. But what you really need to look at is what are you losing in that policy by getting either a lower deductible or a smaller premium. And that's really kind of the important thing. They're writing out a lot of hail damage. They're writing out a lot of wind damage. They're forcing homeowners to go to arbitration now. So those are some things that are not advantageous to Florida homeowners. But if you don't read your policy or have a lawyer read your policy, you're never going to really know that.
I'm glad you say that. Read the policy, because the deductibles, if I get hit by a hurricane, 100% coverage doesn't exist, not in Florida anyway.
Correct. So what we don't realize most of the time is that your deductible is either some type of flat rate or it's a percentage of your total coverage. So I've had clients before that we get hit by a hurricane, the hurricane deductible is usually higher than your other deductible, and they come to me and I look at their policy and you're talking about $12,000, $15,000, $16,000 deductibles before the insurance company pays that.
Is that right?
Yes.
What's the biggest mistake we make then? I mean, I guess we need to read the fine print, but what's the biggest mistake we make, in Florida?
Well, the biggest mistake we make is we probably just look at the cost of the premium, which I understand, right? I mean, we're struggling here sometimes in Florida. People don't have all the money to pay in insurance, and you're kind of just banking on the fact that, look, the storm might pass us this year, we might not get hit. But the lower your premium, usually the lower the coverage. And when you have lower coverage, it's going to cost you more. I joke around in my law office that, it's expensive being cheap, right? The cheaper it is, yes, it feels great in the beginning, but then if God forbid that hurricane hits, we're going to have an issue where it's more expensive.
Yeah, you get a different kind of sticker shock, don't you?
Exactly.
So what do you think the threshold should be? What kind of coverage is good coverage based on your experience?
Well, the main things we have to worry about here in the state of Florida are wind and hail. I mean, as you know, Orlando's gotten blasted by hail lately this year.
Yeah.
So make sure you have wind coverage, make sure you have hail coverage, and then you want to avoid a policy that requires you to go to arbitration if you have a loss. And the reason for that is if you're required to go to arbitration, it's going to be more difficult to get a lawyer or a public adjuster to represent you and make, you whole after a loss.
Why has it come to this? Why don't they just, you see all these commercials where they're the good guys and they want to help you, and all of a sudden I have to fight for my coverage?
Well, look, any insurance company is like any other company. They're in the business to make money, right? So collect more in premiums, pay less in claims. I mean, that's just business as it is. The issue we've had lately is that a lot of the representatives and legislators have been passing legislation that's extremely favorable to the insurance companies, but not as favorable to the insureds. And so it's kind of all coming ahead, and it really started with Hurricane Irma. Hurricane Irma was really the first serious hurricane we had since Wilma. So we went over 10 years without having a massive storm, and the insurance carriers were able to pay out a bunch in dividends to their stockholders and shareholders, and they didn't keep enough in reserves, and then they got kind of caught with their pants down when Hurricane Irma hit.
Given that, is there a risk? I'm just thinking about this right now. Will we see mass exodus where people will say, wait a minute, it's too expensive to live here, I'm gone?
So it depends. I think right now the way it is we're kind of headed towards that where, look, property values have skyrocketed this, since COVID in Florida.
Yeah.
And then with that also comes the expenses where the insurance company is assessing your house, right? So they're looking at the value of your house and then insuring that value. So obviously that's automatically going to raise your insurance premiums. So it could come to that. What I'm hoping is they're able to regulate and address the reinsurance issues in the special session. And then after that's regulated and addressed, that should bring down some relief for our premiums.
Reinsurance, you think, is number one priority in Tallahassee?
I believe it is. I believe that's where a lot of the costs are coming from. And look at some of the statistics. You can look at a website called Demotech. Most of these insurance providers have millions upon millions of dollars in reserves. I mean, I know Tower Hill has, I think, $80+ million. The issue that they're having is if you compare that to years prior, their profit margins have shrunk just a tad, right? So they went from having $100 million in reserve to $80 million in reserve. So it's not like they're poor. We always joke around that they're the billion-dollar victim, but they're seeing profit margins shrink, and as any company, they're trying to fix that. And by fixing that, they're sending the bill to us, the payers.
What was that website? Demotech?
Demotech.
How do I spell that?
Demotech.
Now, what do I do on that site? Can I shop on that site? Does it give me intel? What is it?
It's more of an intel. So the insurance companies are regulated by the state of Florida. They have to show what their reserves are, what policies are outstanding. So it collects all of their information. It will tell you exactly how much money in policies they have out, what their reserves are, and then you can just search by by insurance carrier.
So you can do a little homework and make your own decisions.
And you really should. You should look for a company that has a large amount in reserves. What we were seeing, especially this year with these insurance companies fleeing the state of Florida, is they were typically your smaller insurance companies. They typically didn't have good reinsurance. And because of that, they either closed up shop or they just decided to no longer write policies here anymore.
Off the top of your head, how many companies are still operating here in Florida?
I don't know exactly the number that are operating here. It's still more than enough. But we've lost about 4 or 5 in the last 2 years.
Yeah, I saw that. And a lot of them, boy, they just said, sorry, we're going to drop you. 45,000 people in one case. Paper, property, pictures. You and I talked about this before we rolled the camera. I think those are the things we want to, well, I call it the legal defense for hurricanes, because homeowners and people renting don't think about this stuff. With paper, what kind of document should I get together? Assemble? Driver's license, I'm assuming, marriage certificate, what else?
So any important legal documents that you have that you're worried potentially there's a flood or there's some type of water that comes in and damages it, right? So you're right, marriage certificates, driver's license, social security cards, those things. I think also to add to that, if you recently purchased your house like a lot of us Floridians have, you need to keep your pre-inspection report, because that's something that the insurance company won't turn over if you have to make a claim. And if you've just gotten insurance, they just inspected it and said your roof is good, you need to keep that, because you're not going to get it from them, and we can eventually use that to say, hey, look, my roof was good 2 months before this hurricane. Why is it not good now after we made a claim? So definitely any type of policy documents, any type of pre-home inspection reports, and then obviously the legal documents like marriage certificates and those. Is
this just an ugly rumor, or is it now if my roof is 10 years or older, I'm out of luck?
So that's something very frustrating for a lot of my clients. And this is the issue. Right now, at least, they've started at 15 years. So they've said if your roof is 15 years or older, you're going to have to replace it on your own. The issue I have with that, and most colleagues of mine have with that, especially engineers, is a shingle roof in the state of Florida will last you about 20 to 25 years, right? So if you're closing up shop at 15, you're taking potentially 10 years off that roof. A tile roof lasts from 25 to 30, and a flat roof can last up to 50 years. But it is an ugly rumor, and it is becoming true, at least with 15-year-old roofs.
But the science is there. These things are under warranty for 20, 25 years. I know that myself. I put one in 2015. So now I'm thinking, wait a minute, 2025, I'm out of luck?
Well, and this is kind of crazy, is that, a lot of insurance companies have a lot of these same engineers that work on all the same claims. And they'll even admit, I've deposed, several of them, I've cross-examined several of them in trial, they'll admit to the same numbers I just gave you, 20 to 25 years for shingle, 25 to 30 for tile, 50 for flat. So it really makes no sense, other than they must be looking at this and saying, well, if I can get them to pay for their own roof, I'll insure a 1-year-old roof over a 15-year-old roof. And it's really unfair to the homeowner and to the Floridian citizen.
Yeah, because I ask, well, who in the world's going to pay for it? For a decent-sized house, that's $20K easily.
And right now, with all of the inflation and all the issues with the supply chain, I mean, we're getting letters from vendors that are saying that if it's a petroleum-based product like a shingle or an underlayment, you're looking at 8 to 10% increase in pricing in April alone.
And what about the wait, right? Because if there's no supply, the old supply and demand thing, you're going to wait a long time.
And because of that, obviously, your roofers, contractors, they're going to have to increase the price because they're not getting the job today. They're getting the job 6 weeks to 2 months, to 2 months from now.
Just looking at my notes here, I want to talk about property now. What's the difference if I'm renting a home? Are there things I should look at? And then, of course, homeowners. What are the things you suggest for either party?
So renting a home, you need to have renter's insurance, and that's usually going to cover your contents, right? Your couches, if you have really nice rugs, your clothes, things like that. So what I do is primarily on the homeowner side or on the commercial property owner side. So that's something where you need to have homeowners insurance, obviously, or you need to have a commercial property insurance. And that's really kind of the difference there in terms of what you're looking at as opposed to a renter or as an owner. As an owner, you're going to have the right to, get your roof fixed, or, if you have a pipe burst or something like that. Mm-hmm. As a renter, you're really looking at what your contents are. Okay,
and then finally the pictures. And I know I would want to do that. I have paintings on the walls that are important to me, sentimental. Furniture, you mentioned. I have a hutch that my parents gave me. I mean, there's some sentimental things, and I think people watching feel the same thing. They've got things that are important to them, but you take it for granted because you're living in the house every day. So basically, you have to pretend you're the Secret Service, you're taking the pictures, you're gathering the intel on the stuff that's important to you. Isn't that right?
Well, definitely. And let's take it a little bit step further. Instead of just the furniture as well, bought a new MacBook Pro, a new cell phone, things like that. You're going to want to take photos of electronics, expensive materials or equipment in your home that obviously you're going to want reimbursement upon when you make that claim, if you have to make the claim. I recently just represented a person whose house burned down. They lost everything, and they didn't really have photos of the property inside the house. So now the insurance company is arguing with us over, well, they didn't really have this MacBook Pro, or they didn't really have this, piece of electronic, this PlayStation, right? Mm-hmm. And it's kind of hard to prove it without some receipts.
I was just going to say, you need the receipts. So you need photographs plus receipts, right?
Absolutely. And then the photographs as well. I mean, I know there's companies out there that they're professionals trained on how to photograph a roof or the exterior of your property. That's also something I think is underrated, because the biggest piece of evidence that I can use when helping a homeowner is having pictures of what the property looked like before the loss, and then being able to show what it looks like now, right? So if you're able to get photos of your roof and there's no missing shingles before the hurricane, and there's a couple missing shingles after, I mean, common sense tells us the hurricane caused those shingles to fall off.
So I'm just thinking here, so we want it time-stamped. We want basically a play-by-play. I mean, still photos would be great, but if you have a video walking them through the home, this is the home and the date is and the time is, right? And just give them a tour of the place to show you what it looks like. That probably would be compelling in court.
Oh, we're very blessed now that we all have, we can all be videographers or photographers on our iPhone, right? So absolutely, videos are fantastic. One time I was in trial and I was able to prove to the jury that the homeowner had a loss from Hurricane Irma because of our Ring video, right? So we had a Ring video showing the date of the storm, and you could see just massive pieces of palm fronds being blown across the ring video and hitting the roof. And then you could hear the crunching up above them on the tile roof they had. So, I mean, ring videos are underrated, I think. Cell phone videos, absolutely. Anything you can show as to what the property looked like before or at the time of the loss, as opposed to what it looks like when you make the claim.
Back to the documents for a minute. How do we protect them? Should we get a strong box or something? I mean, gathering them is one thing. Making sure they're safe, God forbid a storm hits. Where should we do that?
So what we do in our household is we actually Ziploc bag any type of documents and then put it in our safe. So hopefully, you know, the safe protects it, but then if water happens to get into the safe, it's Ziplocked. Any way you can waterproof it or protect it, like you were saying, with a lockbox or a safe box or something like that.
Hopefully we don't have any hurricanes this year. This has been great talking to you about this, very informative. Let's summarize. What's the number one priority we should do now as we prepare for this?
You should go through your checklists, right? You need to make sure you have water, batteries. If you can afford a generator, get a generator. And I really think, especially this year with the differences we're seeing in the insurance companies, if you can get a report or a photograph report taken of your property prior to the hurricane season starting, I think it's crucial. I think it's going to help so much in making your claim go easier. You know, one of the biggest things we get from our clients is, hey, how long is this going to take, right? And it depends on how much evidence we have, right? If you have that type of evidence, it's probably going to go a lot quicker and be a lot more beneficial.
We all need to be about the evidence, don't we? It can't be a he said, she said. You've got to be able to prove it. If our viewers want to reach out to you, how do we contact your firm?
So really simple. You can go to jtlegaloffices.com or call us at 855-585-2997.
Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.